And we are live. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Lulu Friesdat. I am the founder and executive director of Smart Elections, and I'm going to give you a quick visual description. I am a pale woman with a long brown braid in front of a bunch of greenery right
A
now.
tiger behind you.
There's no tiger behind me. That is not true for people, our friends with visual disabilities. There is no tiger behind me. We do these visual descriptions for those with visual impairments. And so as we introduce ourselves, we'll we'll all be doing visual descriptions. Bennie
Okay, I'll
is
take it from here.
killing me, just
I'll take it
killing
from
me. Our interpreters are courtesy of Sign Language Connection at the Center for Disability Rights. We love them and we love having them here. And we're so glad that you're with us tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun, and it's also a really serious program about poll watching and about the elections and some of the really serious things that are happening. So we have a really just terrific program, and I hope that you're going to stay with us. So I'm going to go ahead and have everybody introduce themselves, and then we're going to get started. Bennie, why don't you go next?
All right, I am Bennie Smith, Shelby County Election Commissioner and co-host, and also technical advisor for Smart Elections. I am a male, black, low haircut with a dress shirt on, and I'm not standing in front of a tiger. I have computer screens behind me, but you are definitely poll watching, Lulu, and it looks riveting and amazing. I wish I was where you were.
No, let me tell you that I rode my bike for 4 hours today because the bus system in Brooklyn is so unreliable, and I had to get up at 4:30 this morning, and I rode my bike from Brooklyn to Queens, which for anybody who knows New York is not a short distance, like 2 hours.
That is dedication.
And I stopped at 3 different poll sites along the way and did poll watching. I was at one by about 6:30 in the morning, and then I went to 2 others, and then I have to get back to another polling location, and it's too far from my house to get there after the broadcast. So I came halfway to the polling station broadcasting from a park, and then I'm going to go the rest of the way, and I will be at the Cooper Center night shift projects later this evening. Housing projects.
Using binoculars.
Doing poll watching there. So Lynn is our guest tonight. We are incredibly excited to have her. She is a founder, a true heavyweight, an aerospace engineer who has really just blasted into the election protection atmosphere, and we're so glad to have her. So Lynn, go ahead and tell us a little bit about your work, and then we'll get deeper into it this evening.
Great, thank you. So yeah, my name is Lynn Bernstein. I am a woman in my mid-40s. I've got brown hair, long brown hair, and I'm wearing a dark teal colored shirt, and I have a map of North Carolina behind me, and in our logo, Transparent Elections NC, and I'm by my bookshelf. So our organization, we are a volunteer organization, and what we do is we train volunteers to go out into their own communities and observe using North Carolina election law and being civil. What we're trying to do is make elections that are transparent, trackable, and publicly verified and robustly audited. And so we're doing all sorts of projects, and we're excited to be able to tell you guys about those.
Getting arrested and
not arrested.
She didn't.
Lulu looks like she's evading arrest.
Bennie is referring to, I think, the huge bush behind me. It makes me look like a fugitive. I'm not a fugitive from the law. I have a suit on, mind you, a brown suit, and I look very official. And when I've gone to these polling stations, they're taking me very seriously. So, Lynn, you have a training coming up to teach people how to take photographs of poll tapes. What is the date for that?
Sure. So that training is going to be on Saturday, September 10th from 9:30 to 11:30. And it's specific to North Carolina in that we go over North Carolina law, but the actual technique to image the poll tape, and we go over what poll tapes are, that is universal to everyone. Our project, we will be training people specifically in North Carolina And then there's another group, scrutineers, that is sort of doing more national, people who aren't in states where they're running programs like this.
Tell us those dates and times again. I'm going to put it into the chat.
September 10th from 9:30 to 11:30 in the morning. We'll be doing our poll tape project training. You can sign up for it at transparentelectionsnc.org. If you go to the Take Action tab at the top, there will be a hashtag poll tape project. And if you click on that, it gives you everything you need to know about poll tapes, election law for North Carolina, and how to sign up for the training.
And if do you have a link to register, or you want people to go to the website?
Right.
You want them to go to the website? Go ahead and we have a private chat here. Lynn, just put that information into the private chat and I'll transfer it into the comments for everybody. And I might be able to even put it up as a banner for people to see, because we really encourage you to take that training. And Smart Elections is also going to be having a training, but we're just kind of in process right now. We'll be talking a little bit about the specific poll watching that we're teaching people to do. One of the things that I think is really interesting is that the different people, I think, often don't really understand the details of what's involved in poll watching and kind of what checks what, because there's a lot of different things you can do. So, and each of them is a different check on a different part of the process. And it's really important to understand that. So we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail, kind of, what checks what part of the process and why they're important. How is an audit different from checking the poll tapes, and how is that different from checking that the number of voters who vote matches the number of ballots scanned? Like, each of those checks a different part of the process. But the first thing that I want to talk about is just kind of how really tense and even potentially violent things could get. And there's been a lot about that in the media. I love Miriam's face. Miriam's like, ah!
Yeah, sign that out.
So that's our ASL interpreter. So I want to share some of the articles that are kind of in the media right now that are talking about just how really tense things could get in terms of the elections. We're at a point with the number of guns that people have, which is really at a high mark, and the frustration that people are experiencing with the elections, especially Republicans, that there is very serious concern about violence or even civil war. And it's something that we don't really have that much experience with in our country. We're used to just like a peaceful transfer of power, but I think all of us were stunned by what happened on January 6th and are very concerned that things could get worse. And so a lot of our work is focused on making sure that things don't get worse, that if we can assure the public that the elections are secure, that they are accurate, and if there are problems, locate them, investigate them, and, as you are doing in your work, Lynn, shining a big spotlight so that people can really understand what's happening, then we can de-escalate and we can really have a peaceful transfer of power. And if there are problems, we can talk about them and say, well, there was a specific problem with this particular polling location, or with this precinct, or with this district, this election district. And we're, trying to figure out what that is. But, these districts all look like the election, all the results look totally normal. And so I think it's really important for people to understand how important this work is. Would you agree? I just wanted you, Bennie, and Lynn to weigh in on that.
Go first, Lynn. You're our guest.
Yeah. So what I'll say is I've been an election observer, and I've worked the polls, and it does get pretty tense. I'm hoping that local elections officials will teach de-escalation techniques to their poll work, essentially to their poll workers, because I do know that in those precincts, when you tell a voter you can vote on a provisional ballot versus telling them you can't vote on a regular ballot, those two things will have a very different reaction in people. And the thing that
I just want to break that down, because for people who don't understand, you're basically saying, instead of saying you can't vote on the machine or you can't vote with the normal protocol, you have to vote this way. It makes it sound like you're not really voting, as opposed to saying, here, we're not finding your registration, but we do have this option for you, and it will be counted as long as your registration shows up. So it's a kind of, it's the same action, but you're just saying that people need to be trained about presenting information.
Yes. That's right. Yeah. And then the thing that we can do, if you're not a poll worker and you're not dealing with actual voters on election day, is doing the kind of projects that Lulu and Bennie and myself have done, which is collecting these poll tapes. I can tell you that after the 2020 election, we had a group of volunteers go and we imaged all the tapes from Wake County, which is the largest county. And we did some analysis of them, and everything checked out. And so that was great. We were able to post online that those checked out. We're getting other tapes from other counties right now, and there's one county where things aren't checking out, and so we are looking into that county. But it gives people a sense of it actually gives more confidence if people have something they can verify, because I don't think that de-escalation of nuclear arms would have worked if we said trust but no verify. There can't be trust without some sort of verification. And giving people something to check, giving people something to do, that means they're doing something, useful and valuable versus just sort of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And so we're hoping people will follow our lead and help us actually crowdsource the verification of elections.
Thanks so much. And we'll get into that further. Bennie, do you want to just talk about your feelings about kind of the, I'm going to show some of the articles and then I'll have you weigh in on them. So Let me just see if I can pull up some of these articles that, so the first thing that I want to show, let's just see if I can get these going, and we're going to move Miriam up to the top here. So we're going to put her right here. Okay, so you can see RASL interpreter there. Good. So this is a poll that was done by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And one of the things that is very concerning is the potential violence that could be happening. So we see in this, this is the Southern Poverty Law Center website, the mood overall is pessimistic. 44% of Americans agree that the U.S. seems headed toward a civil war in the near future, including 53% of Republicans and 39% of Democrats. I mean, that is huge. That is close to half the country thinks that we're headed towards civil war. Then we have a book that came out recently around the beginning of the year. This is by, surprisingly enough, her name is Barbara Walter. Not Barbara Walters, the news anchor, but this author. And she's been getting a lot of traction with this, how civil wars start. And in fact, there's been articles in the New York Times, are we really facing a second civil war? In The Guardian, is the U.S. really heading for a second civil war? And one of the things apparently that just recently that was kind of escalated this whole concern about civil war was the FBI search warrant and the and the search that happened at Mar-a-Lago at former President Trump's hotel, and it really apparently has kind of increased that violent sentiment in terms of the online information that people are getting. This is on MSN. This is just some commentary from various people, including someone a commentator from the Atlantic magazine. Still, I couldn't help but feel nauseous watching the coverage of the event. Anyone who has spent any time among the American right, whether online or at Trump rallies, gun shows, or right-wing churches, will know just how close the U.S. is to tipping into a scale of political violence not seen since the Civil War. And I know that there was a actual alert that went out from the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, just saying that there has been an increase in threats against law enforcement, and they're very concerned about that. So, Bennie, do you want to weigh in on some of that?
Yeah, we took some precautions. I'm a sitting Shelby County election commissioner. I'm learning a lot about citizens' grand juries. There have been a number of them that have been formed, and they are serving indictments on election officials. I've gotten questioned by a group or two. I'm always responsive to anyone of the public that's asking questions about what should be a public process. But it's a tipping point, and I say it all the time that we've relegated our country into the statistics of the coin toss, and that's really bad when 50% of the country doesn't believe the outcome. And in the 2016 election, 50% of the country didn't believe the outcome either. So it makes sense that we need something more than just trust that the election happened because our democracy is sound, and all the other things that we hear to try to spur confidence without evidence. So I think we are moving towards an evidence base. I would like to report that we just finished an election here, and ever since I got involved, we normally have these countywide sweeps, and we had another reversal of fortune where all of the Democrat candidates won the countywide seats, and we now have one of our guests that was on the show, Steve Mulroy, our first Democratic district attorney uh, uh, ever in the history of Shelby County, is taking office September the 1st. And I got involved to effect change, but now I had to sign like 93 certificates yesterday, where as the Secretary of Election Commission, I get to sign the certificates that certifies the election. So, and even with that, at the certification meeting, we had a lot of people at the public, even knowing that the outcome was what we expected it to be, still protesting that we had an instance where we were not posting poll tapes. It's a violation of state law. Even though the outcome was what was expected, people were still saying this process still needs to be followed. And it warmed my heart to see that they didn't care about the outcome. They still cared about the process. So it's not going away. And it's something that just it's an idea whose time has come. We need a lot of adults in the room to try to quell some of these things. That's why I applaud Lynn Bernstein, because she was willing to reach to the side of the aisle that doesn't necessarily agree with all her views, but they still have the same. We all speak the same language when we're talking about integrity.
Okay, so there was a lot in there, so we're gonna have to go through there and break that down.
A whole lot of
We're gonna switch. Just wait. We're gonna switch. I think actually. Oh dear, my.
A lot of people won.
Hang on, my screen just went and did something totally funky, and now I can only see me and Benny, and I can't see the rest of you. I have to.
Well, you're in a public zoo, so we'll forgive you for that.
No, I just got to try to get my screen.
I heard some police sirens.
Side again.
I think you're ducking out.
Okay, we're gonna try to switch.
There we go.
Interpreters. Okay, super.
Real.
And I'm gonna try to get my screen back to a normal size. I don't know.
Do you have like a stool or something?
There. Okay, no.
Like on a park bench or a limb from the tree?
I am sitting on a park bench at Union Square with a big tripod in front of me with a light, and my laptop is in my lap, Benny. And I think that we just should let it go. Just the fact that I'm on the run and that I'm between polling locations. I don't think we should spend the whole forum on that. Entertaining as it might be. Okay, so I actually am going to juggle us around a little bit. I'm going to throw Benny up here. So I just want to go through that. You just said there was a whole bunch of stuff that you said. Number one thing you said was that you, as an election commissioner, are getting a lot of kind of pushback from the public and grand juries, and I'm really not familiar with that process at all. So could you just explain that to us? What exactly is happening?
There are groups that are being formed around the country, I would suspect, but it happened in Shelby County, and it's called a citizens grand jury. And those groups are forming, and they are conducting investigations of our electoral process. It's fascinating.
And how exactly does it work?
Send you documents that they send you requests, and I think they file cases with like the district attorney's office, and maybe ours is the TBI, it's the state version of the FBI.
And it's controlled by public citizens. They organize this grand jury.
Yeah.
I actually remember maybe like 10 years ago, there was somebody in the election security community who was really trying to get that moving and really was not successful with it. But
well, we got them here.
it's not well known, but many states have on the books laws that allow citizens to organize a grand jury, correct?
Yeah, that's happening here.
Okay, so that's one tool that citizens are using. And are they challenging election results, or what exactly are they doing in Memphis, Bennie?
I think they're issuing, like, they're not subpoenas, but there's I got a number of requests to answer specific questions, and I gladly answer them. I'm a member of the public, so I think they were asking questions that the public should be allowed to ask, and the commissioners should be obliged to respond to. But I think there are a number of people who aren't answering those, and they are apparently have some enumerated authority in the Constitution that gives them more, uh, I guess, close to subpoena power. It's like a grand jury.
And they're interested in kind of the process of the elections, and they want to know more information about it.
They are requesting dockets from the 2020 election.
Oh, so they are still pursuing the 2020 election.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's one of the things that is most frustrating to a lot of the public, the non-Republican part of the public. They've done a lot of polls now, and one of the things that's really interesting, I was just listening to Amy Walter today, who runs the Cook Political Report, and a number of polls came out that show democracy as an issue, as one of the top two issues across the country right now, which is really unusual. Usually it's the economy or inflation, things like that. But one of the things that they're saying is that it means something different to different political parties. Concern about democracy means one thing to Democrats, and concern about democracy means a completely different thing to Republicans. But to independents, one of the things that they noted about the polls is that there is a kind of fatigue about the continual relitigation of the 2020 election. And they're saying that with independents, which are actually a really important, small but really important part of the public, that fatigue with this constant litigation and this constant, drum of the 2020 election was rigged is not actually working in the Republicans' favor. So, that's interesting that they're still, trying to use whatever tools they have.
Well, the federal statutes gives them 22 months. So they're still within the 22-month timeline to request information. It has to be retained for 22 months. So, I see it.
Right. So, and then let's just get into some of the other things. Sorry about the background noise here.
Yeah, that was like a horse going by or something.
It was a garbage can from someone who's cleaning the park. It wasn't a horse. You're like imagining that there's horses and tigers here. It's just a normal park, Bennie. I am not like on safari in Africa.
Okay.
So so you got called up before this citizens grand jury, and then you said also there were elections, and I think this is something that you've mentioned. So people who are like on the program on a regular basis, and I'm sorry folks, there's been so much going on, I actually haven't been watching all the comments, and I see that there's a ton of comments in the chat, so we'll try to dive into some of those comments also. Hello, and thanks so much to everybody who's watching. We love having you here. People who are regularly on the forum have heard you talk about this, Bennie, how there is a standing law in Shelby County that the poll tapes are supposed to be compared to the election results, correct? It's part of the law.
Well, they're supposed to be posted in the window. This is the part that I was talking about today.
I see, but aren't they also supposed to be compared to the election results?
Yes,
and for people who don't know what a poll tape is or don't understand that process, can you briefly just explain that?
Yeah, so a poll tape is basically the closest thing to the cash register receipt when you vote on a machine. It prints out a copy of all the votes that were cast on it, and they are supposed to print those out and post them in the window when the election ends.
And why would people want you to do that?
They are considered prima facie evidence. It's literally a printout before the election returns are tabulated, and it shows what the totals are. And you can technically go and get those on a bike and add up the election yourself if you wanted to.
Right, and there have been instances, the famous one I think from 2012, where you discovered that the poll tape, which is the numbers as they are on election night in the polling location, were different than the election results that were announced. And there were a lot of votes that had been lost. So you actually were somebody who discovered that was a problem.
Correct.
So that's one of the things that Lynn's group is working, why they're working with poll tapes now, is in order to, make those checks, to check with that original tape from the night of election, and then are you comparing it with election night results? Are you going to be doing that in November, Lynn?
Yeah, we're comparing lots of different things on the tape. One of the things that we're keeping track of are serial numbers for the different machines and looking and seeing how those tested. It's a project that I had started with the late Reverend Dr. T. Anthony Spearman before he passed away, where we wanted to really look and see how many machines were they putting in certain locations. Were they sort of, are they picking favorites for, giving more machines to certain, precincts, and, seeing how those machines tested. And so one of the things that that's one of the things that we're going to be doing. But yeah, we're going to be checking totals as well. It's one of the reasons why the poll tape issue that Mecklenburg we're having with Mecklenburg right now is such an issue because it is a 2020 tape that we've been asking for more than 6 months, and we still haven't received all of it. And they've decided to not give us everything and then redact the serial numbers from there. So, it's sort of this conundrum where, we're not going to go back and relitigate 2020, but if Mecklenburg doesn't actually have the rest of those early and absentee tapes, that's a violation of federal law. And, we need to make sure that they are not destroying election evidence because, moving forward, we want any issues that we're finding cleared up before the next election.
So go back and fill us.
You're muted. You muted yourself, Lynn. Lulu.
How about now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I had people in the chat complaining about all the background noise. So Mecklenburg County is a county in North Carolina. One of the things that's important for people to know about Mecklenburg County is when North Carolina picked voting machines, Mecklenburg County picked a type of voting machine that does not use hand-marked paper ballots, right? So tell us a little bit about the voting machines in Mecklenburg County and then why sort of you got into this with the 2020 poll tapes, and just give us a little bit of background because there's no way that people would be following this normally.
Right. So the reason when we had people come to learn how to get poll tapes, we're obviously teaching them how to get poll tapes on election night because that's really the best time to get them. But we're also explaining to people that, if they didn't get their tapes from even the previous primary or the election before that, that we would help them learn how to image these tapes using an app that's really fantastic called Actual Vote. And some people chose to ask for the 2020 tapes. Some asked for, other tapes. So that's why we're doing 2020 tapes because the voters in certain counties wanted to look at those. And so
so you had a training and you trained people how to do public records requests for poll tapes, and they requested these tapes from Mecklenburg County, and you got these 2020 poll tapes. And now it turns out that they're redacted, and there's something else about them that you said was really weird, which is you found out about the machines being booted up the night before election.
Yeah, in some cases, more than 24 hours. And so that's one of the things that you look at poll tapes. Sometimes they'll be, the clock will be off by 12 hours. And that's something that happens every once in a while. And it's, the delta time that the machine was on was, 14 hours or so. And that's typical if there's some glitch like that with a clock. In this case, those machines were booted up more than 24 hours in some cases prior to the election. And they only would give us the election day tapes without the zero portion on them and with the serial numbers redacted. And so when we saw that those machines had been booted up, earlier, by law, they're booted up first thing in the morning in the presence of 2 other election judges so that you have witnesses and observers there. And in this case, they booted up earlier, and they won't tell us what's going on. They won't give us any information, and they're saying that they don't actually have the early and absentee tapes or zero tapes anymore. And so that is very concerning because, as you know, by federal law, they have to save those for 22 months after certification. So we still have a couple weeks to get those. But it's very concerning if chain of custody isn't being followed and processes aren't being followed. And, that's something that is good to find out now, because moving forward, we can change those processes. I've found other processes in our state that weren't per law and fought really hard. And now those processes, some of those have been changed so that it is secure. And so that's really going to be our goal moving forward, is to make sure that those processes are being followed, and that counties like Mecklenburg, that they have to follow the law.
Right.
The big problem that one of the problems I have with Mecklenburg and those machines that they chose was that they chose the barcode, the express vote machines, for all voters. And they will not give voters the option to fill out a hand-marked paper ballot when they go vote in person, even though they have the inventory on hand, because by law they have to have backups of the paper ballots, but yet they're forcing people to vote on the machines even if they don't want to. And that, I feel like that's an issue that we really should address as well. You're muted, I think.
Yeah, I'm really trying to stay muted because of the background noise here. So I put that link up for Lynn's training, and it's up September 10th. And I'm also going to put that link into the chat now, so people can go ahead and go to her website and sign up. So if I got this correctly, and also I think some people, I think poll tapes can be so confusing to people. I know it took me a long time to wrap my head around them. So there's election night poll tapes, which is the numbers from election night. But then if you can imagine, there's the same poll tapes for early voting, which is, but they're never released because we never count votes ahead of an election night. So early voting poll tapes exist, but they're almost never released to the public. But it's the same thing when they close down those machines. The tapes run that show what the numbers are at that moment, and they're supposed to be maintained for, is it 22 months for federal elections? Yeah, so if there's any sort of congressional races on the ballot, anything that's federal, a senator, then that's supposed to be retained for 22 months. And then the same with the absentee ballots. If there's enough absentee ballots, they will run them through a high-speed scanner, and again, there can be a poll tape generated from that run. Again, often not released to the public unless it's requested by a public records request. And what you're saying is that Mecklenburg County is saying that they literally just don't have these tapes now?
That's correct. Yeah, that's what they're telling us. So that really is a problem. We will get to the bottom of it. We have a team working on this, and we'll keep you posted on that. One of the things that Bennie mentioned that I really admire about him is that he is an election commissioner, and he doesn't, he's not as defensive as some election officials are. He realizes that these records are public records, and he's not sort of the public records police. And so, that's something that we're dealing with in North Carolina as well. Since we've been doing this poll tape project, more people have been requesting these poll tapes. We've offered to come and image these ourselves. And there was just an article in the paper today from the state communications director, Patrick Gannon, who is claiming that all these records requests for these poll tapes is really a denial of service attack. And that what we're doing is we're bombarding the election office so that essentially we can cripple their ability to do their work. And that could not be further from the truth. Even in the article, he says, wow, it could take election officials a couple weeks to okay, yeah, it might take a couple weeks, but they're public records. And, for election departments who say we're swamped, we can't, image these for you, that's fine. We will train people, and we will come and image them ourselves. And we appreciate how hard they're working. We understand that they're under-resourced, and we don't want to put any additional, burdens on them. But this is actually something that I've seen firsthand in North Carolina, that it has increased confidence in elections. And so having people who, have been election skeptics, when they come and image tapes with me, and then we look and we see that everything adds up, that really improves confidence. Yes, sometimes, like Lulu, things aren't adding up, and then you do have to deal with that. But you can't just stick your head in the sand and pretend like when you find issues that there aren't issues. The responsible thing to do is to contact the county, get from them what they think happened. Sometimes weird things happen that we don't necessarily understand, but we feel like we at least deserve an explanation.
Well, yeah, I think we have a comment from Kelly here, one of our regular audience members. Kelly saying none of it matters if there are no consequences. Brenda Snipes destroyed ballots, a violation of federal law in Florida 23rd District. That was in Debbie Wasserman Schultz's race against Tim Canova, and she retired with a big fat pension, no punishment. She did get fired eventually because there was such incompetence there. But yeah, it is very hard to hold election officials accountable. In general, the judges tend to give them the benefit of the doubt. Election officials are notorious, actually, for not responding to public records requests. I think they did a study here in New York, and it was 60 to 80% of the public records requests to election officials were simply not answered. So often you have to take them to court. There is often just simply no other redress. Are you considering taking them to court on this?
So there is a mechanism to file a formal complaint against the county to the state. And we feel that we're going to need to do that because we think going through court will take too long. And this is the thing that they set up for people to file complaints against county officials who, if you have prima facie evidence that they aren't doing something, in this case we do, then we give it to the state board and we let the state board investigate it. One of the things that I'm very disheartened by is, I've heard election officials say things like they're tired of receiving predatory records requests. And they're using this language that sort of pits us against them. And what I wish that they would understand is that we're actually helping them if their elections are on the up and up, those poll tapes are going to match. And so, we're really helping them if they would stop being so hostile to us because we're not the enemy. We really do, most of us are just doing this for free. We're volunteering all this time to do this. And so, the idea that we're, because multiple people are asking for poll tapes or that it's somehow a predatory, that word in and of itself is, I don't know, it just sort of incites negative connotation. And I think that elections officials their attitude right now, I understand they're scared, but their attitude right now, I think is making things worse for them.
I couldn't agree more. And we're going to switch out our interpreters again. Yeah, it really just election officials sort of like putting out tweets that say the elections are perfect, or even CISA putting out, a press release saying it's the most secure election in history. It's not reassuring people. What's going to reassure people is this type of work where the elections are really put into a lot of daylight and we're able to really look at the results in detail. That is really what's going to make the difference in public confidence. I absolutely agree with you. And I think I like that sense that you're setting up that we want to work cooperatively with election officials. Sorry, we've got sirens here. I think this is a really good transition, though. I want to talk about the work that we're doing here in New York because we had a much better time this year than last year, much more cooperation. I'm going to show you.
Bushes on them.
What, Bennie?
So you got in the bushes on them.
He's not going to let it go.
He's not.
Don't respond. Just keep going.
I'm just like trying to also as the light disappears,
Flashlight.
I'm trying to keep some light on my face. I know.
Digging hat.
It is basically a flashlight on my face now. But let me just pull up we just did a report. So there's different ways that you can do poll watching and check different types of the election, different parts of the election, and each one is really important. So what Lynn's team is doing and what the scrutineers organization is also doing is looking at poll tapes. And when you do that, you take the poll tape, and that's the information of the election results on the night of the election or on early voting, whenever it is, and you compare that to the election results that are announced or certified. And that's to check that the results have been transmitted correctly, right? Is that basically the intent there, Lynn?
Right, right. There's that, but then there are some other things like, on the tapes to check, how many ballots were scanned through there versus how many people came into that precinct that day. That's something that I think people who are election skeptics are very concerned with. And so it's great when we can say, look, we can help you check that, we can help you check that. And so then that really does give confidence. So there's a lot on that tape that we can check. One of the things that I am seeing is that the machines that we use mostly ES&S, the DS200 tabulators, and that header that prints out at the beginning of that poll tape with the zero portion, you can set the machine to print as much or as little of that information as they want. And what I'm seeing, just looking through poll tapes on the actual vote database, is that some of those headers are kind of getting smaller and smaller. And so that's something else that I want to make sure doesn't happen, is that, we're seeing this trend where elections offices are going dark and they're not giving people information. And that header on that poll tape is one of the really critical things that we check. And it's hopefully election officials aren't going to just stop printing that as part of that tape.
So I think that's really cool that you're focused on a lot of different parts of the poll tape. I want to talk about the part that we're checking here in New York because it's a little bit different. So I think I can share the report that we put up. And so this is a polling location that we checked at the last day of early voting. And we've developed this form. And basically what we're doing is we're checking a different part of the process here. We're checking that the number of voters who vote matches the number of ballots that are scanned. So what they're doing with Lynn's group and with scrutineers is they're checking sort of the very end of the process. We're checking an earlier part of the process, and that's to make sure that you don't have basically like ballot stuffing, or you can have electronic ballot stuffing where the machines somehow are, where malware kind of adds a whole bunch of scanned ballots when the voters weren't actually there to cast them. And so what we have is we've created this form, and in our report we show you the form, and we also break down we show you like how the form works. But basically here in New York, generally we have electronic poll books now, and there might be like 3 or 4 tables. And so we go to each table and we see how many voters have voted at that table. This was for the last day of early voting. So this showed, that's our ad for the evening, to show you can do this too. I think I've blown this up big enough so you can see at each table I wrote down the number of voters who had voted. It was first table 72, then 58, 35, and then 33, and then that came up to 198 voters. And then I went over to the scanners and I checked the scanners, and there were 4 scanners, and each ballot, each scanner I wrote down how many ballots had been scanned that day. It was 50, 50, 49, 49, and that came to 198. So that worked out at that polling location perfectly. They had the same number of voters as ballots. Now, when we did this last year, we found a polling location where there were actually almost 700 more ballots scanned than voters who voted, and we never got an explanation for that. We put in 4 public records requests, and we're going to go back actually and still try again to find out what happened there. But here, we actually had a really cooperative coordinator. They were very pleasant, very well organized, and so we wrote that in the report. We wrote up a report, and we talked about overall assessment well-run site with accurate numbers. Light turnout, only 198 voters in 9 days of voting. That's not very many voters. We really had a very light turnout in this election. It's our second primary, and people are, I think, we've got election fatigue. But this is also really great in terms of improving confidence, because you're there in the polling location and you're really seeing kind of what's going on, what's the vibe, and checking the numbers right there. And the poll tape, in my experience, it takes quite a bit of time. You have to do weeks and weeks sometimes for public records requests. This is very immediate. Right there, literally within 5 minutes of being there, I could say, yes, we have the same number of voters as ballots scanned, and it gives me some assurance that the process is on track. So I think in terms of raising confidence, this is an easier check, and it gets more immediate results. And I really encourage people to work with us. And we actually have a Google form for you to sign up if you're interested in doing this work. And I'll make sure that I get that into the chat before the end of the end of the forum here tonight. So do either one of you have any comments on this particular check? This is an earlier part of the process. We're just checking that the number of voters matches the number of ballots scanned.
Yeah, I think it's a necessary step that almost dovetail into what Lynn is doing, the odometer reading, and ultimately the poll tape. And the last piece is that we haven't mentioned is just undervotes. That would be the number of people who participate, they sign in, but then they skip a particular race, because that total will be different given the races that are on the poll tape. So you have to understand that it's possible for 100 people to say they want to vote and only 50 people participate in a single race, and then 100 people participate in a race above or below it. So I think that's the only piece that's missing, right, Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, so for Mecklenburg, we haven't seen, some of the tapes just didn't print the undervotes. And so, for that, I can't really compare that. But yeah, I mean, if you have a crazy number of undervotes, then, you may have a bad ballot design. Maybe the screen isn't showing all of the contestants that are part of that election. And so, when you see things that are out of the ordinary, it's always good to take a look and figure out, well, why did that happen? Because what we want to do is prevent that from happening again and hopefully correct it in the moment. But if we can't, then at least the next election, that won't be an issue.
But we definitely have had instances where the undervotes seem to indicate some sort of malware or some sort of deliberate changing in the results. I know there was a case in Georgia where Philip Stark did a statistical analysis, and it was like 1 in a million chance that it was random, that all of these votes for lieutenant governor in predominantly African-American precincts disappeared. There were just no votes for lieutenant governor. So there are instances where we've seen undervotes be something that we think is suspicious in terms of a manipulation of an election. So I think Benny's right that it is really important to pay attention to undervotes. And usually that's something that you can figure out just from the election results. You actually don't even need the poll tapes to figure out undervotes. You can just you can go down the ballot and see like what the main, the top
race.
Yeah, the top race on the ballot, like the governor or the president, how many votes did those candidates get? And then there at the same location, how much drop-off? Did you get a certain amount of drop-off is normal, but, if you get a lot of drop-off, then that's concerning. And then the thing that we haven't talked about at all, which is sort of like the big elephant in the room, is the audits. So the audit is checking another part of the process. So you have this check that we're doing here in New York that checks the number of voters against the number of ballots. Then an audit is kind of in the middle. An audit would be checking by hand if the ballot scanners are counting correctly. That's another check, a very important check. Either you want to do, a full hand count audit, or you want to do a risk limiting audit where you're counting enough ballots by hand to have confidence that the election results are correct. So that's checking the scanners that they're counting correctly. And then you have the poll tape comparison at the end, which is checking that those results from the scanners are reported correctly. So there are checks on, each step of the process along the way, and they all work together. It's not one or the other. These are multiple checks, and you also have logic and accuracy tests at the beginning before the election to make sure that the machines are functioning correctly. So these are kind of 4 different parts of the process that can be checked. And are you guys going to be doing any? Are you focusing primarily on poll tapes, Lynn, or what are your other? What else do you have? Do you have anything else going on?
Some of the other things that I do is I have people observe their absentee ballot processing, and so one of the things that I found really interesting was that I have people fill out a form before. I teach them about the process. Here's the process. Here's what you're going to see when you go to your county, and then I created a Google form. And so at the beginning of that form, I asked them, how confident are you that the process you're about to see is going to be legitimate? And generally, for a lot of people, it's pretty low. And then once they go and they see that elections officials are doing what the law says, they're doing the things that I'm saying that they should be doing, they're not doing the things that they're not supposed to be doing. At the end of that form, I ask again, now that you've seen this process, what is your confidence level? And generally, it's a 7 or an 8. And so teaching people about the process, having them go and observe the process, it does build confidence. Unfortunately, in Wake County, I brought in a bunch of people, and everything went great. We watched the absentee ballot processing, and then at the end of that meeting, the election director came up to me and got in my face and was very hostile to me. And that I had so many people saying, like, well, we were really happy about things, and then now we're really concerned, and we're not really sure we trust these people now. And so, I hope that my situation is an anomaly. I do have good relationships with other directors in the state. We're very transparent. My county where I live, they've been particularly hostile to me, and so I'm hoping that is an anomaly. But from what I'm hearing from some other advocates around the country, generally, once you find something that didn't go perfectly, and you bring it to their attention, generally they don't want you watching anymore, it seems like.
That is absolutely true. And I actually, last year when we had this discovery of the almost 700 extra ballots in that one location, I was banned from poll watching. They wouldn't let me poll watch, and they wouldn't let me watch the audit, even though I had all my certificates from the candidate. They just absolutely were not going to let that process continue. And as I said, we did 4 public records requests and have yet to get the information about.
Is that why you behind the bush?
It's dark now. I really look like a fugitive now. I brought 2.
I brought you some light.
I brought 2 film lights, and then they turned some light on behind me. I was trying to sort of catch this light that I think I don't know what's going on. Like it's the street lamps.
I know. I was like, got like a whole. Jesus.
Yeah, but I did actually find the link for the Google Forms if people are interested in learning about this technique to compare the number of voters who vote, the number of ballots that are scanned. We're going to be trying to do this in different locations around the country, and I super encourage you to learn about it. And I think I can also put that into the. Now it's raining. I'm going to have to leave because I can't let my computer get wet. It's been a difficult night, but I am going to poll watch. And you cannot stop me. Nothing. You cannot stop me. So do you want to close us out, Bennie and Lynn, with any final thoughts? And we should also just, we'll just do 1 or 2 more minutes to close out, and then we will talk about just how to support smart elections and things like that.
Yeah, so you don't get blown away. I'm going to defer all my time to my esteemed colleague, Lynn Bernstein.
Oh, geez, Bennie, thanks. I guess what I would say is learn about your observing processes and try to get involved. If you've never been a poll worker before, you should do that. You should really make sure that you understand the process and go observe in your state if you can. I learn something every time I go and observe. I think people getting involved legally, be civil, always be civil to elections officials. I think that's the best way that we can all work together to increase confidence and have a peaceful transition of power, which is what I think everyone wants. And
can you give your Instagram and your Twitter?
Yeah, so I am, I'm at transparentelectionsnc.org. And on Twitter, I am I believe I am Bernstein _ Lynn. And I'm on Facebook for North Carolina hand-marked paper ballots for transparent elections. Yeah, so hopefully you go to my website, transparentelectionsnc.org, and there are many, many ways to get involved.
All right. I don't think Lulu is going to come back. It looked like she got blown away.
She's on the run.
Yeah, it looked like she's on the run. I think the police behind her. So we are always fundraising. You can always go to Smart Elections and donate. I would actually also like to give a shout out to some people who've been giving me donations on blackboxvoting.org. I didn't even realize that site still has so much traffic, but thank you to the people who donate there. We are here again on the 4th Tuesday. I don't know what date that is, but it'll be a Tuesday in September. And that's it for us in our show. And always remember that this is what democracy looks like. And I don't know how to end the show, but good night, everybody. You guys can sign out. I guess our ASL interpreter will help us close out. Lulu coming back in. We're done, Fugitive. You got to close us out, though. This is the blooper reel.
Okay.
Okay. Lulu, we're still alive. You got to stop us, Lulu. This is a blooper reel. Miriam, I thought she was going to use like some boxing gloves to fighting. We got a blooper reel going, Lulu. You got to turn us off from being live. We're still live.
Okay. Good night, everybody. This is what democracy looks like.
This is what being on the run looks like.